Unibet. Episode 126. Mike Keenan, Head Coach, Team Italy.
It's better for you to understand than to be understood. It's your responsibility as a coach to understand the students, to understand the players. What makes them tick? What makes them invest in this sport and want to be a hockey player, want to be a good team player? It's your responsibility to understand. And at one time, I think coaches had the attitude that they were the boss and that the players have to understand you. Well, I think conversely, I think it's, and I always thought that it's better for me to understand what will make a player be a better player, what makes all those different individuals be better. Whatever that happens to be, it's your responsibility that you're coaching Wayne Gretzky or the superstars of the league, or you're coaching an average player. What is important to that player to make him so motivated to be the best player he can be?
Die Tribüne erhebt sich und der Hexenkessel kocht. Da bleibt kein Moment, um einmal durchzuatmen. Bring it on. Mit dem Shorthander abgefälscht und die Scheibe im Tor. Aus dem Nichts. Wie schön war das gemacht?
Unibet Hockey O'Clock. It happened before that huge hockey people graced Unibet Hockey O'Clock. It hardly ever happened that someone of his magnitude appeared on the show. Makes me tremendously proud that he's found some time to talk hockey here on Unibet Hockey O'Clock. It's no one else than Stanley Cup winning head coach and Gagarin Cup winning head coach Mike Keenan, now with the Italian national team. Coach Keenan, incredibly impressive that you did find some time, and really happy that you're gracing the show right now.
I appreciate you having me on, and we always like to talk about hockey, our favorite sport, so my pleasure.
Coach, we already had the honor a week ago during one of the finals games in the Ice Hockey League to talk a little bit during one of the intermissions. A lot of hockey right now going on in Italy. You coaching the national team, preparing them for the World Championship of the Division 1A. We have Cortina in the Alps Hockey League in the finals. We have Bolzano on a long finals run that might have already ended when this conversation comes out on Wednesday. How is it right now to coach hockey in Italy and have so much high-profile hockey going on?
Well, it's been interesting. And my introduction to the Italian hockey scene here was quite encouraging in the fact that when I arrived here, I didn't expect so many arenas and so many small villages and towns throughout this area. And the northern part, obviously, of Italy is really engrossed in hockey. To my pleasant surprise, I was told that there are more arenas in northern Italy than all of Europe. So you go around all these small communities, they got minor hockey kids playing, and the coaches are developing the minor hockey system. So it's really interesting. And of course, looking at the hockey players, not only in the Ice League, but the Alps League, and then recruiting or at least acknowledging some of the Italian players. That was, again, a pleasant surprise that the caliber of play was much higher than I expected. And I think it's a good indication, as you just said, that Cortina and Bolzano are both deep into the playoffs, into the finals, representing Italy, and also involved in very, very competitive leagues.
Now, we have to back this a little up, and we talked about it last week on air, as well as the Italian Federation made a huge splash in signing you, and a lot of people just went, wait, is this the Mike Keenan that's now coaching the Italian national team? Yes, it is the Mike Keenan. How did that all come about?
Well, they were reached out to me quite some time ago, actually, and asked me to assist them in recruiting and suggesting coaches for the program. And then after a thorough evaluation of myself and others that were involved in the search. They asked and came back to me and said, "Would you consider doing it?" And I said, "Well, what would you like me to do?" So they said, "Move to Italy and be in charge of our program." So it didn't take me that long to make that decision. I talked it over with my family and made the decision to come to Italy to live here and be part of this program.
How big a piece of a puzzle was adding Mike Polino to the mix? I know you have some mutual history with him. He's your assistant coach with the national team. How important was it for you to have him on your staff?
Well, it was really important to me. Mike's such a great coach and has a lot of history coaching various levels, the KHL and the NHL, like myself. And we went together to Russia, won a Gagarin Cup in our first year with Ilya Voroviev, who was their assistant, young Russian head coach now in the KHL. So the dynamics were there. Mike had worked with me in the NHL as well as over in Russia. We had a long-time relationship. I actually coached Michael in 1979, I believe it was, or 78. And Dave Jansen, we added to our staff as well, who is the goalie coach. I coached him in junior hockey, and I coached Michael Polino in the University of Toronto when I was there. So we won a national championship together. So we've had a lot of history. We have a lot of the same philosophy regarding our sport and our team and how we develop a team. So it was really important, because the other part of it is that Mike's father was born in Italy. Mike's heritage is Italian, and he's had a lot of history with the Italian Federation. I know he brought his university teams over to Italy to play when he was a head coach at Brock University in Ontario, Canada. So it's important for our program that he's involved. He's a great teacher and communicator and a good coach, excellent coach. So we wanted to round out our coaching staff as well as we could. We've got others involved right now. Diego Scandella is part of our group, and then when these finals are over, we're going to have two of the Italian coaches join us. So unfortunately for us, and fortunately for them, which we're hoping that now they can both win a championship, that they're involved with their teams.
You coached national teams before, but never outside of North America. And obviously, coaching a national team happened quite some time ago for you. But is it like riding a bicycle? You already know what to do, or was this time around different, getting a grasp of the Italian hockey landscape and different first steps than it took back in the day?
Well, the difference is that, and as you just mentioned, I had to educate myself in terms of the level of play and also the players that are available, and to look at the broad scope. It's a macro and micro management assignment, if you like. We're in a position now. We're preparing for the World Championships in England. Yet at the same time, we're taking a long-term view at the possibility of some players joining us for 2026 for the Olympic team in Milan or in Italy. And so it's an interesting project in terms of looking at someone who's 20 years old and saying, well, I wonder what he's going to look like when he's 23 or 4, and looking at a 30-year-old and saying, I wonder what he's going to look like when he's 33 or 4. So it's an ongoing evaluation process, which is quite different than what I experienced in coaching Team Canada. I coached Team Canada in junior and also World Championships and also Canada Cups, which was like the top teams that you would be up against in the Olympics. So it was selecting NHL players from various teams and backgrounds, and then making those the tough decisions. And we're going to have tough decisions this time around I can relate back to my days with Canada Cup. I probably cut 10 Hall of Famers. So it was, it was tough to make those choices and decisions, but we also probably kept 20 Hall of Famers. So it was a good problem to have.
Probably a couple, or not as many Hall of Famers that aren't going to make the cut with the Italian national team. But then again, who knows? We're recording this conversation 12 days out of the beginning of the World Championships of the Division 1 Group A, as it's officially called, in Nottingham. It's Italy, one of the presumed favorites to make it back to the April World Championships. But again, the tournament still has to be played. What's the state of the team right now? Where are you in your preparations? Granted that you don't have access to the Cortina and Bolzano players right now, but as of this recording, where does the team stand?
Well, this is our third week of training, and we've looked at a number of players in November, and then again in the tournament in Budapest, and then again in Italy. And the second tournament in Italy, we did well in the first one. We won the gold medal, and we tied in the second. But we looked at 15 new players. So we've tried to have a wide view of all the possibilities. And as you just mentioned, with the two top Italian teams, and the one in the Alps and one in the Ice League, there'll be some communication with them when they're finished, and selection as well. And we've even reached back to, I was in Poland to watch our junior team play. So it's as I said, a wide-based evaluation, and we'll continue to do that. As I said, we're in our third week. We've got 15 forwards here right now, and we'll continue to add people. We're having a couple players tomorrow, McNally from England and Larkin from Germany. So it's an ongoing process, and it's interesting the fact that our practice time is now diminishing, yet we have to still assemble and put a team together very quickly.
Just to get listeners up to speed as well, the IHF World Championship Division 1 Group A consists of Italy, Great Britain, Lithuania, South Korea, Poland, and Romania. Great Britain and Italy being teams that were in the A pool before. Is there, or how much pressure is there on you and your team to advance to the A pool again, especially with the upcoming Olympics in a couple of years?
Well, that's certainly our goal, and our mission is to reach that level of play again, and to come away with the gold in this particular tournament, so we can be moved into a higher level of competition. The viewers may or may not know it will automatically be in the top division in the Olympics as a host country. So it's important for us to try to get to a point where we're playing the best teams to get the most experience leading into that. We have 2 more championships after England to play in, World Championships before the Olympics, and then there'll be one after the Olympics. So that process, again, it's a very interesting dynamics in terms of assembling a group to win now, at the same time have the vision to see what that group would look like in 2026.
I know you're working constantly on getting your team in shape and getting the best players available, but how much of your time is already dedicated to looking at players that could become available for the Olympics, that could get Italian citizenship? How big is that pool the pool of players that we're talking about? Is it 50? Is it 100? Is it more? Is it less?
No, it's less, and because we've made a decision that as a federation, and I'm part of that federation now, that there will only be about 25% of the team made up of players that have heritage. In other words, aren't born in Italy, but do have heritage. So 75% of the team will be Italian. So we've looked extensively at the Alps League and the Ice League to try to identify, and we continue to look at, and we have a lot of players that are very interested in coming to Italy to play from North America in particular and other parts of the world. And we can't guarantee that they'd automatically be part of it, but in doing so, they probably enhance the depth and the competitiveness of the group. First of all, at the level of competition, whether it's in the Alps or the Ice League, and then as the internal competition grows better and is more intense in terms of us selecting players for the national team, it raises the competitive value of the team, which is a very positive thing. As I just mentioned, that the competitiveness that we had to face when I made the selections and had to cut, as I said, a guesstimate, if you like, of 10 Hall of Famers, that really pushed the level of competition and the team's ability to play at a higher level because of it.
Me personally, I'm very much looking forward to having those players in our league because, as you said, it raises the level of competition, makes everyone around hopefully a little bit better, and maybe also the Austrian teams learn a little bit from it, playing against way better competition that's hopefully incoming. But I want to talk about one of the bright spots and one of the players that gets more talked about in recent days and recent weeks. If listeners haven't heard from him, his name is Damian Klager. He is sits at 2 meters of height. He's one of the apparently most gifted goalies and prospects Italian hockey has had in a long time. He's likely to be drafted in the upcoming National Hockey League entry draft, and obviously he'd be a candidate for the Olympics as well. Maybe we're looking at one of the next great Italian goaltenders. How much of him have you already seen, and how would you rate him as a prospect and as an Italian once-in-a-generation goaltender?
Well, he's certainly a very impressive young man. His age, he's very mature. He's very dedicated athlete. He's developed really well in terms of his position in goal. He's a very tall man. He's probably, as you said, in NHL standards, he's 6'6", and a very athletic individual, being that tall. I think that he'll continue to improve rapidly, and he's got great goaltending coach now and Dave Jamieson. But I think that he will definitely be drafted in my mind. I know that there's been several NHL teams asking about him, asking us, the coaches, about him. And I know that I've seen many teams, scouts at the games where he's been playing. So he's going to be one of those phenomenal players that Italy's really fortunate to have, particularly because he's a goaltender.
What would it mean for the Italian Federation and Italian hockey on an international level to have a draftee of this magnitude when we look at his size in the upcoming entry draft?
Well, it's really important for the country, for the federation, for the program, and for hockey to have an Italian goaltender drafted and have a skill set that will make him an exceptional NHL goalie one day. And I think that that bodes well for the program we're involved in, the national program for sure, going and leading into the Olympics. But I think that it also is a special indication that the growth of hockey in Italy is improving.
You've coached at the highest level. You've seen some of the very best goaltenders on this planet, and I know it's been some time coaching the National Hockey League. But if you had to find like a lowest common denominator that made goalies great. It still applies for Damian Klager as well. What's the one trait one needs to have to be successful at the highest level?
Well, I think that they have to have, first of all, some experience. I had the pleasure of coaching seven Vezina Trophy winners, those goalies that were, and they played for me, that were recognized as the best goaltenders in the world. They all took time in terms of development. I really didn't have a very, very young goaltender get to that level unless he had some experience. And then at the same time, they have to have a special work ethic and determination. And this young man has that, to get better every day. And this is a very difficult position. It's evolved into a different style over time and different coaching over time from goalie coaches. But he very much wants to be a professional athlete. He's a perfectionist. And that's a good trait to have as a goaltender. They work extremely hard at their craft and at their skill set and improve dramatically over time. But I think that they have to have the mental demeanor. If you ask me what would it take, all of them had different styles, but they had the mental demeanor and the ability to concentrate at a very high level. And, you can imagine that puck now is coming at you 100 miles an hour from every possible angle that you can imagine, and then some. And that is the mental toughness they have to have as a goalie to endure that kind of activity. Obviously, the eyesight is very important, but the mental skills, the mental preparation, the mental focus, in my mind, is the most important part in their position.
It's interesting when we talk about goaltending, because your career spans over so many eras. We had incredible offensive output in the National Hockey League. We had the dead puck era. And just recently, with the super skill forwards that have entered the National Hockey League, scoring has gone up after being down for almost 2 decades. Is playing goaltender the hardest it's ever been, or have there been times where it was even more difficult?
I don't know if it's the hardest times. The players certainly are exceptionally talented and would create a lot of challenges for goaltending. At the same time, the goaltending position itself has increased in terms of competition. There are more good young goaltenders now, I think, throughout the world in that position, which puts an emphasis on your competitiveness and your ability to win those jobs at the highest level. But the size of the goaltenders have increased dramatically over the last 2 decades. And that's the big part of filling that net with a high-level athletic performer who's a very large or tall individual as well. So the coverage that they can maintain and achieve is greater than the smaller goalies of yesteryear.
Coach, we also brought you on the show to talk a little bit about your history coaching in the National Hockey League, broadening my listeners' hockey horizons, and you as a long-time and very successful National Hockey League coach. Your first 11 years in the league, you made the playoffs and embarked on a journey that 16 teams will go on tonight and the next couple of days as the Stanley Cup playoffs await. And to me, it's the greatest tournament in the world, to a lot of hockey fans as well. But how does it really feel for a coach, for a team? And you've been on so many playoff-bound teams, to really go on that Stanley Cup playoff journey?
Well, I'll tell you this right from the onset. To win at any level is extremely difficult. And you have to have dedicated athletes. You have to have selfless athletes. It's the ultimate team game. And everyone in that locker room on a team has an important role, whether they play the most as a defenseman, obviously goaltending. You play more often than others, most ice time. And then it's just, it's an incredible composition of so much in terms of team building. You have to have the mental discipline, the emotional investment, the intellectual concepts of what you're trying to do as a group. Played at the highest speed of any sport in the world. And, you've got nowhere to run out of bounds like you would. And our listeners are in tune to soccer here in Europe. And you don't run out of bounds. You don't run out of bounds in hockey. You can in basketball. You can in American football. You can in soccer. You can in baseball. But this is contained working space, competitive space that's highly, highly physical and has a great deal of speed. As I said, the fastest sport in the world. And the dynamics of being able to sustain that. For example, I'll give you some examples of the teams I coached in Philadelphia. We played 26 playoff games in 52 nights, coast to coast. And that meant we had to go to the Stanley Cup finals, which we did. So that's an indication of the dedication you need after you've played 82 regular season games, after you've played a dozen preseason games, season games. So you're up over 100 games played as a group, and to sustain that and to win is a very difficult challenge, and it takes an incredible amount of dedication and effort from everyone involved, not only just your players, but your staff and your medical team, everyone involved in an organization. It's the ultimate prize in sport, as far as I'm concerned, and what it takes to win 4 rounds in the playoffs, best of 7.
It's also something that the Unibet stats show that postseason of 87 that you just mentioned, 4 rounds against the Rangers, Islanders, Canadiens, Oilers, those 26 games in 52 nights starting on April 8th, 1987, and concluding with a game 7 on the 31st of May, 1987, just to get the historical facts straight. In that regard, as we all know, it's incredibly difficult to hoist that cup. 16 teams will start the Stanley Cup playoffs. Only one team lucky enough to get the most coveted trophy in sports. And you've shared some NHL records or have them under your belt anyways. But in terms of records, is the 19 straight playoff series wins by the New York Islanders the most impressive team record in hockey and maybe all the sports?
Yeah, they were very, very impressive and very dedicated, very cohesive, exceptional team. And, I got a reference back to my first year of coaching. We ended the Philadelphia Flyers. We were the youngest team in pro sport, obviously, therefore, the youngest team in professional hockey. And we were the team that finally ended their dominance. The Islanders, we beat them out in the playoffs, which was an incredible task in itself. And then to go on to play in the Stanley Cup finals. So they had set the bar very high. The Oilers had to learn something from them before they won their first cup. They beat the Oilers. And then, of course, the Oilers became formidable, maybe one of the best teams ever in the history of the National Hockey League. But the Islanders themselves taking they won 4 cups, but they were in the finals 5 consecutive years was impressive.
Those experiences that you had in your early coaching days, what experiences helped you and that one magical season where you brought a cup to the New York Rangers? What helped you the most?
Well, that's a great question because it did help me. I had gone to the Stanley Cup finals twice in Philadelphia, once in Chicago, the Final Four in Chicago 2 of 3 years, and then the finals. And then I coached 56 playoff games in Philadelphia, 60 playoff games in Chicago, both 4 years. And when I got to New York, I had a real good understanding and a real good feeling of what the ingredients are and what it would take to win a Stanley Cup. And that was exhibited by the number of trades, even at trading deadline, that we made, that I felt even going into, although we were in first place overall, I had the experience under my belt and knew that we had to make some additional changes to be able to reach that pinnacle. And that just comes from experience. And, to go to the Cup 3 times prior to that, and to learn from others and learn from the teams that we played what it would take. And that was invaluable for me to understand those aspects that would make our team the best team in the world.
And we've seen it time and time again that you need those experiences that eventually get you over the hump, and it got you that coveted cup in the spring of 1994, early summer of 1994. And to this day, I do still ask myself the question, and I'd like to hear from you. What is more, impressed is the wrong word, but what is more curious, that New York hasn't been back to a cup win, or that no Canadian team in the National Hockey League has been able to hoist a cup since those early 90s?
It's as I said, it's a very difficult trophy to win. And that's been, exhibited again. You have to have all the right pieces in place and have depth, because it's such a long task. You're going to go through injuries. You're going to go through health issues. But the New York Rangers hadn't won the Cup in 54 years, and they haven't won it since. And it's going to be 30 years next spring. So that just indicates, in the Canadian teams, I believe the Montreal Canadiens in 1993 were the last to hoist, the Canadian team to hoist the Stanley Cup. And it's such a difficult task to win the Stanley Cup. And it's very impressive that we had a team. Tampa had a good run. Now Colorado has won it, and it's going to be interesting. If you look at those 16 teams, as you mentioned, that start tonight, there's going to be some very, very, very strong, good teams get eliminated in the first round. So it's a task that you have to be prepared for. Right from the first series you play, you can get eliminated very quickly if you're not totally mentally invested and emotionally and physically invested in this arduous task of winning the Stanley Cup. That's how difficult it is to win it.
Just listening to you sends shivers down my spine, and it's just the best time of the year of being a hockey fan. The local championships come to a close, the Stanley Cup playoffs will keep us on the edges of our seats for the next 2 months. So great time to be a hockey fan. Great time to be talking to you. I know you're working on a tight schedule and we had some technical difficulties. So I'm trying to kind of round the conversation out a little bit with a couple of questions that I still have. I mean, to all the listeners out there who've been following hockey for a long time, they probably know of your nickname, Iron Mike. And nicknames in sports are funny because some of them do stick. Some of them are just thrown out and people and beat writers and all sorts of media members try to see, is something sticks? Why did Iron Mike stick?
I think because I had a style and do have a style where in my opinion, I'm fair, but I'm very, very firm. And you have to pay attention to every single detail that is involved in the dynamic game of hockey to be successful. And that takes a lot of repetition. It takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of teaching, inspiring, leading. And I think that my approach was very, very firm in terms of what I expected from the players. And you get to a point where your expectations of them have to be embraced, that they can begin to feel confident enough to make a difference in their game. You can give them the belief and you can train them and give them the understanding that the way you've played is fine, but you can play better. And once they discover that and aren't fearful of it anymore, and they do get better, they get more confidence collectively as an and as individuals, and it makes your team better. And that's why I believe the Iron Mike style, if you like, stuck, because I never deviated from that mission or from that teaching acumen. I'm formerly a teacher before I got into the hockey business of NHL. I was a high school teacher and I taught at the University of Toronto. And I was very fair teacher, but a teacher that demanded and expected a lot, because I knew the students could give a lot. And when is a good teacher? A good teacher when the student is ready to learn, and when they're ready to learn and you can inspire them to be better and build their confidence in their intellectual approach and every other approach that comes along with it, then I think that takes a lot of discipline, and that's what I ask the players to do.
Now, one question that has to be asked in that regard, because you both roamed the same streets in the mid-90s in New York. Did Iron Mike Keenan ever meet the other Iron Mike Tyson?
Actually, we've done some charity events, but that was the extent of it. I've actually been very, I guess the word would be lucky that I've been able to do many charity functions in New York and other parts of the world, and to meet other athletes from different disciplines. And it's been interesting because you get to have a conversation of what the ingredients were for them to be that successful, and what did it take. Obviously, talent is part of it, but also the determination and the effort and the heart and the preparation, the discipline is certainly a big part of it as well.
Speaking about that, you've been successful as a head coach for such a long time. I've already prefaced it. Your career spans over many decades, and now we're at 73 years of age. You're trying to fulfill your dream of coaching at the Olympics, but of course there are new and younger generations of young and aspiring coaches. If you had to give a young coach who is maybe listening to this program in hockey, one piece of advice that has helped you throughout your days and is still valid for young coaches, what would that be?
I believe that would be maintain the belief in your own abilities, your own level of competence, and continue to learn and grow and adapt. You know, I've coached now in 5 generations or 5 decades, and you have to have the adaptation of being able to adjust your methods, not necessarily your principles, but your methods, and you have to sustain and maintain the belief of what you have within yourself, that you're competent, you're capable, and that you can inspire and achieve with an ongoing open mind of adopting new methods and new techniques, new knowledge about every aspect of this particular sport. It involves everything from your tactics to your strategy to your ability to understand science, your mental skills to prepare players. It's a vast, and that's has been so important to me and refreshing, that the dynamics involved in the game of hockey, from everything from understanding the human body and how it functions and how it works and how you can most effectively have an athlete perform both physically, mentally, emotionally, is what is a challenge for a coach. But it's that core belief that you have in yourself. And there's many times you doubt yourself, but you have to stick with what you believe in and be yourself. And I think that being real, players accept that and understand it and learn from it.
Those 5 decades of coaching, of course, the players have changed as well. When speaking of adapting methods, what's maybe one aspect of you adapting methods with new generations of players? Just to give people back home one kind of example.
Well, first of all, I can tell you that your coaching style is predicated also on the ice surface that you're coaching and teaching on. And I had to make that adaptation. Obviously, when I went to Russia, now I had coached in the Olympic-sized ice surface in various tournaments. But now to coach entire season on a larger ice surface took a huge adaptation. But I would say this, the thing that is most important as a coach when you are going through generational changes is that it's better for you to understand than to be understood. It's your responsibility as a coach to understand the students, to understand the players, what makes them tick, what makes them invest in this sport and want to be a hockey player, want to be a good team player. It's your responsibility to understand. And at one time, I think coaches had the attitude that they were the boss and that the players have to understand you. Well, I think conversely, I think it's, and I always thought that it's better for me to understand what will make a player be a better player, what makes all those different individuals be better, whatever that happens to be. It's your responsibility that you're coaching Wayne Gretzky or the superstars of the league, or you're coaching an average player. What is important to that player to make him so motivated to be the best player he can be? And I think those adaptations and that statement in itself explains the transition over time of how you have to adapt as an individual yourself, as a coach.
Coach, one last question, and of course, it's it concerns itself with the advent of the Stanley Cup playoff. 16 great head coaches go out together with their teams over the course of the next couple of days and get this tournament underway. And from our good friends at Unibet, I just received some fresh odds as regards to teams that could be in the running for the Stanley Cup. It, of course, starts with the Boston Bruins at odds of 1 to 4.5. They're followed by the reigning champion, the Avalanche, at odds of 1 to 7. Then the Oilers, 8.5. And in fourth place, the Maple Leafs at 1 to 12. If you had to pick a Stanley Cup champion, the team that's going to hoist the trophy in June, what team would that be? And for what reasons?
Well, first of all, people would pick and have picked Boston, but it happens so quickly. Bergeron may not be able to play in game one. That's a huge hole for the Boston Bruins to open up a series because their best centerman is injured. So let's make sure that we all understand that's part of the mix. You have to stay healthy. We probably would have won the Stanley Cup, and it's, that's a hypothetical assessment. But Wayne Gretzky played for me in St. Louis, said we probably would have won the Cup if Grant Fuhr didn't break his leg in the play. It has a huge impact on the ultimate outcome. But I would not be surprised if Colorado could take another run, because now they've had that experience under their belt. They've tasted it. They had a great ending to their season, and I think they're prepared. And the reason I'm not taking Boston is just because of that. I don't know to what extent Bergeron is going to be, how long he's going to be out, and to what extent his injury is.
And as we've seen time and time again, and you've experienced time and time again, we all don't know what to expect of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and it has a tendency of some funny things that happen. We're excited to find out. We're excited to see Team Italy have success at the World Championships Division 1 Group A. Wish you all the best for that endeavor. Maybe you'll join us at Finals Game 7 again if it happens. This upcoming Friday. We're about to find out tomorrow. Anyhow, and wishing you all the best for your next endeavor called the Olympics. Thank you so much for taking such extensive time with Unibet Hockey O'Clock.
Martin, thank you. And as we all love the game and love the playoffs, that's part of it. There's going to be so many upsets that people are going to say, wow, that hockey is unbelievable. So, yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if the finals in the Ice League goes to 7 games or not. But certainly an exciting game yesterday, almost double the regulation time. So it's always a demanding task to win, and we'll see what's going to happen in this particular playoff series, the Cortina or the Alps playoff series, and then of course the Stanley Cup playoffs. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Exzellente Unterhaltung mit dem schönsten Sport der Welt.
Unibet Hockey O'Clock.